Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. One pillar has been Agnes Hailstone, of life below zero from the beginning, a rough survivalist, a no-nonsense person who calls of the most hostile settings on home on Earth. Thus, when she abruptly vanished from a show, viewers were taken by surprise. Was it disease, a family crisis, or something else private? For someone who is so closely connected to both customs and geography, her absence wasn't merely apparent, it was disturbing. And as conjecture increased, the actual cause of her disappearance turned out to be much more nuanced than imagined, could have envisioned. Now, if you've ever listened to Life Below Zero, the likelihood is Agnes Hailstone is someone you know, a no-nonsense, uncompromising woman who has been a staple of the show since its inception broadcast. The program chronicles the lives of a few Alaskans who reside far away from humanity, fighting against the weather in of the most hostile settings on Earth. However, Agnes is more than merely she's thriving, not just surviving. Born and having grown up in Norvik, Agnes entered the 1972 in the midst of the globe wilderness in Alaska. There is a little amount of her name is associated with local mythology. A few cite Hurricane Agnes as the inspiration for her name, which had the similar effect on areas of the US year, but most likely that's simply a coincidence. What is understood is that at an early age, Agnes was surrounded by a traditional lifestyle. She acquired hunting, fishing, and hide tanning skills from her relatives. Rather than a classroom, the countryside was the source of her education, tracking creatures, making use of every component of a capture, and making tools from the natural world. She developed a particular proficiency with the ulu, is a classic curved blade that's utilized by ladies of Inupiac descent for centuries. In her grasp, it's not just a blade. It represents survival. Prior to meeting Chip, her current spouse Agnes was in a relationship before. Her first spouse, solely identified by the last name two of her children, were fathered by Carter, John Carter, and Douglas, or Doug Carter Hailstone. Eventually, that marriage concluded, apparently as a result of Carter's desire to depart from Alaska, which Agnes wasn't ready to perform. Her heart was anchored in the Arctic. In the meanwhile, Chip Hailstone Edward Hailstone was born in 1969 in Montana's Kalispell. He matured, surrounded by woods and mountains, gaining a lot of survival skills along the journey. When he was only 19, he made a journey to Alaska and didn't turn around. He moved to Norvik, and soon after met Agnes. Initially, they hunted as companions, but after, when her prior marriage ended, their relationship deepened. 1992 saw the couple get married and established a shared existence along the Kobuk River, far up in the frigid north of Alaska. Chip and Agnes, in contrast to most couples, don't depend on the office or stores, occupations. Nearly all of their income comes from the hunting, fishing, bartering, and land for their necessities. From capturing salmon, their entire lives revolve around trading furs, about maximizing what nature has to offer, supplies. Winters may be harsh. Frequently, temperatures drop to 50 or 60 degree F. However, they have adjusted. What some may perceive as difficulties, they have transformed into a pattern. At one point, Chip summarized his way of life in his bio on social media, with only a few words: I fish, hunt, and come together to earn a decent, honest living. And don't think about comfort food, chocolate, or pizza. What Chips are all about, flesh from caribou. Just off the hunt, Agnes too has her own tastes and abilities. Her preferred hunting implement is the military's tough Mosin Nagant rifle. The weapon was initially created in the late 1800s and continues to be respected for its strength and dependability. She never leaves home either. Absent her reliable ulu blade, Abe spoke multifunctional instrument that's as essential to her day-to-day existence as any modern kitchen appliance. However, what sets Agnes distinct is not only her tenacity, however, her profound reverence for the earth and creatures. Although she hunts, she has a close connection to nature. She always apologizes quietly after taking animals' lives, acknowledging the equilibrium between respect and survival. When she's not hunting, but instead spends time reading history and true crime tales. Detective plays and novels are her favorites. By the fire, she finds tranquility, reading over the pages as the Arctic outside, the winds howl. This silent, determined way of life finally caught TV producers' attention, seeking to demonstrate actual off-grid existence. Life Below Zero made its debut in 2013, and Agnes initially appeared in the debut of the television series End of the Road that in the same year. If you haven't watched it yet, nevertheless, Life Below Zero and its derivatives immerse spectators in the unvarnished Alaska's wildness, where people decide to live entirely off of the grid. At this point, Alaska may be beautifully lovely, but it's also among the most harsh environments on Earth. In between the constant menace and the harsh cold of untamed creatures, it requires genuine grit. Since its 2013 debut, the fans have been enthralled by the series' an unvarnished look of life on the edge, where ice, snow, and independence are always on your side. Shot in opposition to Alaska's beautiful but harsh landscape terrain, it displays the harsh truth of surviving in temperatures that can drop to an extremely cold 80° F. What really distinguishes it, however, is the breathtaking cinematography, the unprocessed sincerity, and the intensely intimate tales at its core. Every season is busy, with special moments such as Sue Aiken's positioned near the isolated Kavik River camp, confronting potentially harmful creatures by itself. Next up is Andy Basic's performance. Spectators, the laborious effort that goes into preparing the Yukon for Winter River. However, what makes the series so compelling, the individuals themselves are essential to life. The Hailstone family, for example, brilliantly blends traditional Inupiac approaches with contemporary survival techniques. Chip as well as Agnes Hailstone, in addition to their kids, pay attention to the organic cycles of the seasons, frequently covering more than 90 meters, only to locate the most suitable hunting areas. When they get there, they set up tents, on the ice, or right in the snow, camping amid some of the most hostile circumstances that can be imagined. Theirs is a real collaboration. Everyone contributes. Weather hunting, fishing, animal skinning, preparing tools, tanning hides, and products. Nothing is wasted. Each component is utilized, frequently for dealing or bartering. The elderly girls who were split up after being homeschooled, their leisure in between classes, in family trips, and Norvik ventures out on Theeland. In face of tremendous adversity, for instance, Agnes lost her mother-brother, as well as the brother's partner to the cold seas. Hailstones are steadfast in their conviction that life is worthwhile. Chip frequently considers the freedom they discovered, spending time together as a family, being aware of the precise location of their food originates from, and continues a tradition thousands of years ago, that is. Even if the girls decide to take a different course, when he claims that as they become older, they'll always possess the abilities to return and live away from the land, hunting, constructing, and living in one of the most difficult environments on the planet Earth. But there are some controversy involving Chip, because Hai's not a Inupiac, and he is legally prohibited from hunting specific indigenous. Finally, something Agnes and the kids are still permitted to do so. This distinction has caused some viewers to wonder if Chip gains from his spouse's heritage in order to maintain his position on the show. He has long been regarded by fans as one of the other divisive cast members. An additional one particularly notable cast member is Jesse Holmes, who relies only on his sled team canines. His narrative demonstrates more than just physical endurance, but the ability to bounce back mentally, required to continue when nature is unrelenting. Among the program's most, it captures elements that are fascinating. The reality of the hunter versus the hunted Alaskan wilderness. People out there aren't supreme in the food chain. Additionally, the show doesn't downplay the reality that, sometimes, the only option is to use lethal force, a means of survival. Each kill is handled with dignity and nothing is thrown away. However, making difficult choices is necessary for survival. When the wild doesn't give a damn about, are you ready or not? The program does give the appearance that the actors are all living together. Seclusion. For many that is the case, but some people do not have much interaction with the external environment, whether by using sparse. Some households use emergency. Radios or Wi-Fi are still capable of speaking when required, particularly for security or materials. For example, Norvik's residence to the Stones of Hail. It could appear totally distant, yet it's just about Kotibu, the largest city in the area, is 42 miles away, Alaska's northwest. Journey between the two may need a boat or snowmobile, but it's not completely disconnected. That subtlety does not always appear on the screen. What, then, has kept life below zero so well liked? It's not dramatic or ostentatious stunts. It's the authenticity. It's the constant struggle to get food, keep shelter, and negotiating hazardous landscape. It's an honest, unvarnished look at how much power and expertise are required to live without the comforts of contemporary life. That authenticity resonates with the audience. Not everyone is on board, though. A few. The show has drawn criticism from native Alaskans for exaggerating or taking advantage of conventional lifestyles to increase ratings. Agnes hasn't said much, but openly about her appearance on reality TV. She appears pleased to share her culture and way of life, of existence. She remains loyal to her heritage and cherishes her connection to the land. Chip, however, he has encountered his share of significant dispute, not only regarding hunting regulations, as well as for his brief absence from season 10, which attracted admirers worried. What actually happened then? As you can see, Chip Hailstone ended up in severe legal issues following a hit with 2 perjury charges and 2 counts of giving misleading information, all resulting from a tumultuous event in Alaska, Norvik. Everything started when state troopers in Alaska responded to make a fight call. A number of individuals were participants, such as Chip's stepson and his daughter. Upon the arrival of the troops, they conversed with everyone present and ultimately made several arrests. Personalities, including Chip's stepson. Later in the morning, Chip and Agnes arrived with their kid at the building for public safety, where the arrests were being processed by troopers. There was no time wasted by the Hailstones. They informed the troopers right away that the disagreement sprang out because of their daughter, and people approached stepson, armed with a weapon. At that point, troopers Gordon Young and Christopher Bitts took the Hailstones outside for a conversation. Bitts outlined how other witnesses, Chip's was the real one, the stepson and daughter who started the battle. This was not accepted by the Hailstones. Okay, they started yelling and demanding that a firearm had been aimed at their daughter. Things became more heated when Chip's daughter moved abruptly, that both soldiers took to be a danger to Bitts. To halt, a possible Bitts took hold of her arm and struck. The following day, Chip emailed the state of Alaska. Troopers allege Bitts attacked his daughter inside the public safety constructing and led to her major suffering. Trooper Young was also written by him. Bitts had to be stopped, and that he and his spouse were terrified of Bitts by placing his hand on their lives, firearm. In fact, Chip said, Young expressed regret for Bitts' actions. That mail served as the basis for one of the accusations, submitting inaccurate data to cause difficulty for someone. Only 2 days following the event, Chip applied for both in the short and long-term order of protection against Bitts. In the courtroom, he testified in oath that Bitts had said that Young had assaulted his daughter and to intervene physically. He reiterated the identical assertions from his email, the firearm threat, the regret, and the requirement to protect his family. The judge gave the temporary arrangement, but that sworn testimony, which served as the foundation for one of the accusations, of perjury. As the situation proceeded, the Bureau of Alaska an investigation was conducted. In the course of the investigation, Chip recounted his account to the trooper who was assigned. Bitts had took hold of his daughter's arm, perhaps employed a wrist lock and even had his firearm. According to him, Young took Bitts' hands and kept them apart. But after investigating the situation, the investigators found no evidence of Bitts were required. That interview added a second count of giving false details. After 2 weeks, Chip went back to court to testify this time for a permanent order of protection. Once more, he provided the same account of what happened, except the request was turned down by the judge. That last, the second perjury resulted from testifying charge. Finally, Chip was taken to trial for each of the 4 counts. He didn't provide testimony in support of him, but his lawyer contacted a number of witnesses to the stand, including his daughter and Agnes, who stated in court that Bitts had been excessively hostile towards Chip's daughter and thought the reaction was inappropriate. When the defense presented its final arguments centered on 2 key ideas, that each and every witness, in addition to the troopers who retreated, according to Chip's account, there was no convincing evidence that Chip didn't actually trust what he stated. However, the jury wasn't persuaded. Chip was convicted on each of the 4 counts. He received a sentence of in the midst, 15 months in prison of Life Below's 10th season's filming nothing. The family was deeply affected by his absence. Since Chip was no longer there, his wife Agnes had to assume the majority of the hunting responsibilities, and she freely discussed how much they missed him. The coffee tasted bad, food became bland, the home simply dropped off. But she had her girls by her side. Agnes pushed through from the side. She observed her daughters become proficient hunters, transitioning from subordinates to equals in the field. Following several months of service, the release of Chip occurred in the spring of 2017. At the year's end, the legal cloud had gotten clear. There were no charges against him. He carried a weapon, back on Life Below Zero, once more, and said he was, at last, having a sense of self. Having lost in his final year, he was prepared to make up for lost time. While the cameras continued to catching the hailstones as they roll, they went back to their only life. No, one formed by survival and nature and fortitude. Then, in 2020, viewers had their heads scratched when Agnes Hailstone vanished out of thin air from a Life Below Zero episode. She'd only been seen the previous week, thus her absence seemed sudden and unexpected. Without a formal justification from the show, conjecture quickly emerged. Viewers began to worry, particularly since, unlike many TV personalities, Agnes lacks publics. Social media accounts to explain things on her own. One who is worried. Even on Twitter, a fan expressed hope everything was fine. Fortunately, the mystery was soon solved. Agnes came back in the upcoming episode, and finally, fans could exhale with a sigh of relief. The same period, Life Below Zero, the following generation gained traction. This subsidiary unveiled a carving by a younger bunch of survivalists living in the heart of the Alaskan wilderness. In 2020, it relaunched and presented visitors with up-and-coming artists like Jav Alex. However, despite its novel perspective, the spin-off has encountered difficulties recently. Fans were actually worried, sufficient to start a petition in the hopes of keep it. In the meanwhile, the original cast, featuring Kavic's famous Sue Akinsand, the family Hailstone, stayed at central to the franchise. For at one point, several fans were afraid about the spin-offs could obscure or take the place of the original crew. But then, the wonderful news arrived. Chip on Reddit, Agnes Hailstone appeared, with a revision. They gave everyone comfort that they continued to shoot new Life Below Zero episodes. Additionally, they kept the door open in case someone wanted to come back. Of the subsequent spin-offs, fans are reminded that anything might happen on TV. The answer was instantaneous and sentimental. Fans flooded in, with remarks honoring the Hailstones and conveying the extent to which their tales intended for them. Numerous people discussed how they were motivated by the family's presence. A few to go outside, others to fortify their familial ties. For a long time, the announcement was a lifeline for watchers, of encouraging news in the midst of speculations of a cancellation. However, not all of the news was positive. 11 years later, and Life Below Zero's 23 seasons are coming to an end. Down. It has not yet received an official label. National Geographic cancelled, but the message is evident behind the scenes. The program has not received a 24th season renewal. Several cast members claim that participants, such as Chip Hailstone, this is the last run for him. Chip verified the information in a post on X, previously known as Twitter, elucidating that the program was over and the end of their contract has arrived. Nevertheless, he left the door slightly open, pointing out that occasionally shows do come return. But as far as he was aware at the moment, that was it. He concluded the update in his customary direct manner, revealing fans should anticipate roughly 16 more scenes in what appeared to be the last run. As time went on, Life Below Zero developed into a complete franchise. It gave birth to 3 spin-offs. First, Next Generation Port Protection Alaska and Alaskans. However, there were indications that moving. When actors from the spin-off began to show up more, often on the main program, viewers started to think something wasn't right. In official terms, neither National Geographic. The BBC has not verified the conclusion of the franchise, although some fans still hold out hope that Chip could be. I'm wrong. Chip, however, reaffirmed the information, once more responding to a thread on Reddit in Anchorage. He stated that the contract was over and the movie was completed, and even alluded to further extensive reasons, bringing up the budget and Disney changes. 11 years is a long time for anyone. Spectacle, particularly one as distant and tough as Life Below Zero. Additionally, the more expensive a show is, the longer it runs, it gets. However, this series wasn't simply any performance. National Geographic's flagship reality show, the diamond in the crown of their narratives from real life. In actuality, it was so prosperous that the network split off several shows under the identical brand. They even changed the name of Port Just to put it under the protection of the Life Below Zero umbrella. That's how the original show's name had a strong become. Nat Geo earlier this year, Courtney Monroe, the president, commended the network's storytelling strategy, describing it as visually stunning and characterizing their performances as a festivity of remarkable, genuine individuals. Additionally, while she made no mention of life in particular, below Zero, the accolades are undoubtedly applied. Agnes Hailstone and Chip have lived for more than 25 years, not simply to survive jointly, yet forming a life and a legacy amid the untamed wilderness of Alaska. The process, they have raised 5 daughters, Mary, Tinmac, Erktak, Kutan, and Caroline. Although surviving on the G,